Hanse, good afternoon. I'm Krisanachkate. Welcome to APTN National News. A man is dead after a police encounter in Winnipeg's North End. It happened yesterday on October 2nd, just after 12:30 p.m. Winnipeg Police Service held a press conference yesterday afternoon to share the details. Acting on multiple reports of a suspect armed with edged weapons, Winnipeg police officers attended to this apartment building on Main Street in the North End. The WPS say they were met by an armed male in a hallway. Both a taser and a firearm were discharged. WPS says officers on scene provided immediate medical care to the man. The male was then transported to hospital in critical condition where he later died. The Independent Investigation Unit, or IIU, was notified and attended the scene, and police are working on notifying the man's family.
We do this as we want to be transparent, but it becomes frustration for you because you want to ask a whole bunch of questions after the use of force encounter. I can't talk about that, and I won't talk about that. So you might hear a lot, I don't know, or no, I can't talk to you about it. And unfortunately, that's the way it is. You know, it has to be that way for the IU to conduct their investigation. So I just want to make that clear to you.
In a press release, the IIU said they are asking the Manitoba Police Commission to appoint a civilian monitor to review this incident. This is the third Winnipeg police officer involved death in the past month. On September 2nd, Tammy Bateman, a First Nations woman, was hit by a police cruiser near a homeless encampment by the Red River. On September 15th, a 52-year-old man was arrested for an outstanding warrant. He was held in a cell at police headquarters after being medically cleared. Hours later, during a routine check, the man was found unresponsive. He was taken to hospital where he was pronounced dead. Police have not released his identity, but sources say he is a First Nation man from northern Manitoba. The IIU is investigating all of the deaths. We now want to tell you about this week's web poll question. Over on our website, we ask, do you think there should be a national inquiry into police-involved deaths of Indigenous peoples? Your answers are yes, no, or unsure. Have your say at www.aptnnews.ca. After serving 51 years in prison for the murder of a Winnipeg man in the 1970s and being granted a new trial, Clarence Woodhouse was exonerated this morning. In 1973, Clarence Woodhouse, Alan Woodhouse, and Brian Anderson were convicted in the death of Ting Fong Chan. They were given life sentences with no eligibility for parole for 10 years. A fourth accused, Clarence's brother, Russell Woodhouse, died in 2011. With the help of Innocence Canada, Anderson and Alan Woodhouse were acquitted in July of last year, with Chief Justice Glenn Joyal telling both men that they were wrongfully convicted. From the beginning, Clarence Woodhouse always maintained his innocence. He was 21 years old when originally charged. Today, he is 73 years old. APTN News will bring you an update on Woodhouse's acquittal in our evening national newscast. Two Indigenous leaders in northern Alberta are raising the alarm about environmental contamination in their communities. They're pointing fingers at the federal government, who they claim did little to inform the Indigenous community of a polluted dock for almost a decade. As Sarah Connors tells us, this isn't the first time they have dealt with what they say is an environmental cover-up.
And it's sad because the federal government always talks about truth and reconciliation, but yet they cannot be truthful to something that's so important to us, and that's the health of our water.
Indigenous leaders in Fort Chipewyan in northern Alberta are accusing Transport Canada of covering up a contaminated site in the heart of their community. The Transport Canada dock, known locally as the Big Dock, is a popular hunting, trapping, and swimming spot. But according to Indigenous leaders, the federal Crown had deemed the site contaminated as early as 2017, but failed to notify the community. They say they only found out about the alleged cover-up in recent months through a third party.
Since learning of this, we conducted 2 of our own studies that confirmed that the sites are still contaminated with cancer-causing agents.
This isn't the first time the community has grappled with environmental contamination. In August, the Alberta Energy Regulator fined Imperial Oil $50,000 for a spill that occurred at the company's Curl tar sands facility upstream of the community. Leaders say the company and the regulator covered up the leak.
I guess it is kind of in line with the Imperial incident because, again, information was withheld, but this time it's on a grander scale.
The leaders say they're considering legal action against Transport Canada. They also want to have an in-person meeting with Transport Minister Anita Anand. Sarah Connors, APTN National News.
APTN News reached out to Transport Canada for comment. A spokesperson said in a written statement, in part, that a 2017 risk assessment found the site was not likely to pose any risks to human health. The department says there's no risk to human health based on risk assessments that have been done over the years. Every year, students and staff from Muscowgan First Nation School walk towards the former residential school in recognition of the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. This year's tribute offered a new monument to honor residential school survivors. CTV's Sierra de Souza Butts reports.
It means a lot for our people. That's why they kept the school up for people to see it's not going to happen anymore. What happened to us, the truth.
Harold Littletent is one of many people who are proud to see a memorial site honoring residential school survivors.
It's a big honor to have all these children behind us, the ones who should know the truth, what happened in this school.
A new monument symbolizing a new era of reconciliation. Located on Muscowgan First Nation, it aims to spread awareness about the community's history of the residential school system going as far back as 112 years ago.
This day is just truly a memorable day because it's honoring our past, our present, where we are, and where we want to go in the future.
The statue has two sides, one showing the survivor flag in honor of every residential school survivor located on Turtle Island. The other side shows the building of the former residential schools on the nation. Wolf is a member of the Historical Site Committee who helped create the monument. She says its purpose is to provide an opportunity for healing while paying tribute to several First Nations ancestors.
The survivors that were standing there that we honored today, they survived the worst of it. They are the ones who deserve the recognition and the honor for everything that they've lived through, and they're still here today in resilience.
A permanent reminder to honor the nation's history and educate others. Sierra de Souza Butts, CTV News, Muscowgan.
APTN Investigates is back with an all-new season. The flagship news show is making the move to Saturday night. Investigative journalist Kenneth Jackson travels to the Wasauksing First Nation in Ontario. Members there are fighting back against drug dealers and addiction impacting their community.
We arrive in Wasauksing just a few weeks before millions in treaty money is going to be released across the territory. And the First Nation is right beside the town of Parry Sound. The town's problems can quickly become the First Nations, and vice versa. And while there's a similar signs of a small town struggling with drug addiction, this is a first. The local child protection agency recently moved in right next to the methadone clinic downtown. I covered the Child and Family Services system for 5 years and never seen anything like this. If this is how bad things are, what's going to happen when some people struggling get $100,000 deposited right into their bank account?
Hi. I'm a reporter from APTN. I'm just in town working on a story, and I couldn't help but notice that you guys are next to the methadone clinic. I just thought that was an interesting dynamic. I'm wondering Why, CAS is right next to a methadone clinic.
If you want to hang on, I can get our supervisor.
Okay, great.
The supervisor never comes to the door, but they give me a card of someone to call.
Definitely check out that show on Saturday. Sierra Bettens spoke with Andrew Carrier, who tells us his story about attending a Métis day school. That story when we come back in about 3 minutes. Stay with us. Welcome back. As part of Canada's assimilation policies, many Métis students were sent to federal and church-run day schools. And while students returned home after class, many experienced abuses similar to those who went to residential schools. APTN Sierra Bettens sits down with survivor Andrew Carrier at the former site of a Catholic-run day school in Winnipeg. And a warning to our viewers, this story mentions physical and sexual abuse.
École Saint-Marie is a Catholic-run day school run by the St. Boniface Diocese. And I started here in grade 1 in 1964. And I myself am also a survivor of a day school sexual abuse that occurred here at the age of 7 years old. That was back in 1965.
A modest church and childcare center are tucked away in Winnipeg's Old St. Vital neighborhood. But for Andrew Carrier, it's a haunting reminder of the abuse he endured at the former École Saint-Marie day school.
I had to confess my sins at the age of 7 years old, and the concept of a sin was beyond my knowledge at that time. And during that process where I had to repent and confess my sins, he took me aside and in where the changing room were for the priests in the back of the church, and proceeded to sexually abuse me. That year I failed grade 2 because of lack of being able to concentrate, and also because of the fear that I would be victimized again by the priests.
Carrier is among the estimated thousands of Métis who attended federal and church-run day schools in Canada. Despite being able to go home after school, their experiences often mirror those of residential school survivors. While many Métis attended residential schools, others were sent to day schools or provincial schools. Métis scholar Dr. Tricia Logan said the federal government created a classification system to determine where Métis children should be sent.
If they were living closer to a non-Indigenous community or living like a farming, like scriptland or farming life, then they would less likely be taken according to the written classifications. Or if they were living, quote, the Indian mode of life, they would be more likely to be taken.
As a child, Carrier lived around the corner from the school. He remembers coming home to tell his mother what the priests did.
I distinctly remember my mother reacting very angrily, and I thought she was angry at me. And actually, she hit me because I was distraught, and she slapped me and she said, "Je peux pas t'en parler," which means I don't want you to talk about this. I don't.
Today, as the Manitoba Métis Federation's Minister of Residential and Day Schools, sharing his experience and connecting with survivors is his mission. He says day school trauma impacts survivors to this day.
I've heard of attempted suicides or thoughts of suicides. I've heard a lot of depression. The trauma of surviving this type of abuse is with you for the rest of your life.
For survivors and their families, locating records can be exhausting. Logan says school administrators often manipulated records and left Métis off attendance lists, making some ineligible for settlement claims.
When Métis children came, or Métis survivors came to claim compensation, their attendance wasn't recorded, or wasn't recorded consistently or fairly. So the reflection of how Métis were treated inside the schools then rippled down to the records, the administration, and the legal cases.
In fact, Carrier says the only proof he has of attending École Saint-Marie is his student ID card. That and his memories.
We have to listen to the truth before we can look at the healing process. And the truth is this, is that it happened under the watch of the Catholic Church. It happened under the watch of my parents. It happened under the watch of the community. But more importantly, where were our medical and our legal system protecting the families who did speak out at the time?
6 decades on, at the site of École Saint-Marie, Carrier holds a sash created in honor of Métis Residential School, Day School, and 60 Scoop survivors.
A black thread in here to recognize the hard time that we had to survive in order to be here today.
He says it's a reminder that their experiences must never be forgotten. Sierra Bettens, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
The Premier of BC sat down with our Tina House on the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. That interview when we come back in less than 3 minutes. Over on the East Coast, St. John's 10, Charlottetown 15. The Grand River 10, Nujiwak 6. Seguin 11, Gaspé 12. Toronto 18, Ottawa 17. Sunny and Sudbury at 17, Wawa 15. Thompson 2, Puckatawagan +1. Gimli 8, Princess Harbour sunny and 6. Yorkton 3, Swift Current 3 as well. 0 in La Ronge, Stony Rapids 2. Sun's out in Fort Chipewyan at +5, Peace River, rain and 7. 15 in Lethbridge, Calgary 12. Rain in Tofino at 15, Penticton +20. Fort Nelson 5 in snow, Dease Lake 7. Whitehorse 8, Mayo 8 as well. Yellowknife +2, Wrigley 5. Inuvik 6, Colville Lake 2. Baker Lake 3, Chesterfield 5. And Clyde River 4, Aglulik 4 as well. Our APTN's Tina House recently sat down with BC Premier David Eby to discuss some important issues on Truth and Reconciliation Day. Here is part 1 of that interview.
Thank you. We are so pleased to have Premier David Eby join us today on APTN National News. Premier Eby, nice to see you.
Tina, nice to see you too.
Tell me what you've been up to.
Well, a lot. Our family's got a beautiful new baby girl. She's 2 months old. We have obviously wrapped up the legislative session, and we're just a couple weeks away from the start of the election campaign writ period. And there's a lot happening.
It's amazing. Now, you became Premier on November the 18th, 2022. You've been busy with your team. Tell me about some of the accomplishments that you're most proud of.
Well, there's been a lot of work happening, and I'm really excited about some of what we've done. But for your viewers at home, one of the pieces I'm really glad that we're making progress on is connecting people to family doctors. In the last 2 years, following our agreement with the Family Doctors of BC, we've connected 300,000 British Columbians with a family doctor who didn't have one before. This is the first time the number of people looking for a new family doctor in the province has gone down instead of up in 20 years. Rents are finally starting to come down in the province. We're building now 4 times more rental housing than Ontario. It is the first time in a long time that rents are going in the right direction, more affordable for people. Still from record highs, more work to do. But I think maybe for the APTN audience specifically, some really big accomplishments around Indigenous rights in the province. And one of the major highlights for me was the Haida Agreement, where we voluntarily recognized Haida title on Haida Gwaii instead of doing it through the court process. And major economic initiatives involving Indigenous people in the Northwest with the Teltan, major mining projects in the Northeast, with Chief Crystal Smith, a net zero by 2030 major energy project, the largest Indigenous energy project in North America. Big accomplishments, big change, all done with the people of British Columbia together.
That's amazing. I mean, that's a long list of accomplishments, but we've certainly got a lot of challenges. I know we're dealing with a very serious houseless issue here in the city of Vancouver, and in fact, in all the province. What would you like to say about what your team is up to in tackling some of those issues for those that are houseless right now?
Yeah, I think, you know, when I look at the big challenges we face, what we've gotten done, there's so much more to do. And the disturbing thing is that the Conservatives are proposing to undo all of this work, and particularly on housing. We've dedicated $19 billion to building housing across the province in different ways, and it's all kinds of different housing. We're the first provincial government in Canada to fund housing directly on reserve in Indigenous communities to make sure that people have the housing that they need. It's always been a federal government responsibility, but they haven't been keeping up their end. By doing things outside of the box, like partnering with nations to build on reserve, we can help address the really disturbing overrepresentation of Indigenous people in the homeless population, people who move from their home communities because there's no housing into an urban center, and then they're alone, they're disconnected and vulnerable, and end up outside. We can interrupt that cycle early on. And we built social housing and supportive housing across the province, and we've got to keep doing that work. Where you and I are sitting, you can't quite see it in the camera, but Crab Park is just down there. There's an encampment, the City of Vancouver downtown core. We've got to do more, get people inside and give them a chance to build a good life for themselves.
Absolutely. Speaking of those, the opioid crisis in this province, I mean, it's just skyrocketed. We've lost over 15,000 people now since the epidemic was first declared. What are the plans on your behalf, for the government's behalf, of addressing that crisis?
Well, there are a couple of key pieces around this, and one is around the prevention work. When we support kids, when we make sure that they have food in the morning and a breakfast program, when we make sure that there are cultural and sports activities that they can participate in as we're funding across the province, arts programs, and for Indigenous youth language and culture programs, it helps divert and prevent people from ending up on that path of addiction. And I strongly believe in that phrase that I've heard so many Indigenous leaders say, that culture saves lives. By supporting and partnering on cultural promotion and restoration for Indigenous people, I think we're saving a lot of lives. But it's also about treatment and making sure, again, for the APTN audience, that there are culturally specific and appropriate treatment options, especially for Indigenous youth and Indigenous people generally. I was part of the opening of the Orkalelam Treatment Center on Vancouver Island. This is dedicated for Indigenous youth. It includes both detox and treatment. It is at full capacity right now, supporting Indigenous youth struggling with addiction to get them back on track. And then working with the First Nations Health Authority. You know, we've got 4 major treatment center projects that we funded through them that they're delivering across the province, and more to do. You know, we're going after the criminals who are manufacturing and distributing these drugs. We're taking their homes, we're taking their cars, we're pushing the federal government to put better port policing in, and we're supporting the people who are struggling in the community with treatment and housing options.
That is your midday newscast for this Thursday, October 3rd. Dennis Ward will be here in a few hours for your evening newscast. Make sure to join us then. From everyone at APTN National News, hi miigwech masicho. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you again. Ekse.